Hello everyone, Lee Smith here from Blood and Iron Martial Arts, and today I'm pleased to bring you a new segment on our channel. It's called Klausen Sagas. And it's starring, of course, my student and a very important person, Mikkel Klausen. Tell them about yourself, Mikkel.
I'm a student of medieval history. I did my honors bachelor's at the University of Victoria in medieval studies with a minor in Greek and Roman studies. I'm about to go into my second year of a master's in Viking and medieval Norse studies in Oslo. Did my first year in Iceland. And I have an undergraduate research award with UVic and various papers on Viking berserkers, which is what I'm specializing my entire career into.
So episode 1 is going to be who was the real Skalla-Grímr. We all know the nerdy YouTuber, the sword enthusiast we all see, and a lot of people's first introduction to our channel come through his channel. But who was the guy behind the name Skalla-Grímr?
Skallagrim, or if you give it the Icelandic pronunciation, Skalla-Grímr. Double L's is a TL sound. He's a figure in Egil's saga, Egil's father, who immigrated, or more fled, to Iceland from Norway with Egil's grandfather, Kveldulf. These three men are all in the same family line as berserkers. Kveldulf is a berserker, Skalla-Grímr is a berserker, Egil's a berserker. So Skalla-Grímr's, Skallagrim, whatever you want to call him. He gets his own segment in the saga, and in his segment he fights numerous battles, he becomes a blacksmith, performs various feats of strength, kills lots of people, and eventually becomes a wealthy, relatively speaking, wealthy landowner.
So let's first talk about like the good things he did, his accomplishments, that kind of thing. Let's talk about the accomplishments of Skallagrim, or Skalla-Grímr.
His accomplishments are very much what you would expect. He fights battles, he goes abroad. The saga doesn't go into a huge amount of detail about him because it is, after all, Egil's saga. So they're more giving kind of a genealogical context. I would say his greatest accomplishment would be becoming a wealthy landowner, because not everyone got to do that, especially if you're fleeing from the Norwegian king to a relatively harsh environment that's far away from, established trade routes. And also somewhere where you can't really grow as much as you would like to grow, even today.
So how did he get wealthy? Tell us a little bit about what his lifestyle would have been like, how he got wealthy.
Iceland, there wasn't, that much of an established kind of a area that was settled there. You could go there if you're fleeing, or you just wanted land, and you could claim your own land. So he fled Norway, claimed his own land. He would go off on seasonal raids and battles. He would fight enemies, so on and so forth. And then when he took over after his father, Kveldulf, became too old and or died, he was able to just keep the land that he owned going. He had servants. He could hire, he was wealthy enough to hire servants. He had land. He had prospects.
So essentially, we call him like a typical Viking.
Pretty much.
Go out, raid, take stuff, get wealthy, build this basically small empire.
Yeah,
in Iceland.
Yeah, just have territory, have land. That is kind of the peak if you weren't going to get into politics.
Now, was he ever political or not?
He was on the wrong side of politics. He was just the Norwegian king did not like him, hence why he stayed in Iceland. Gotcha.
So yeah, his entire life was just raiding.
Pretty much. That and lifting heavy objects.
So he was a strong guy.
He was incredibly strong.
Like, give us a feat of his strength. Like, give us an example of how strong he was. They said he was in the Sagas.
A very famous example is when he enters a fit of rage during a ball game with his son Egil and another boy. And what he does is he picks up this boy and he dashes him to the ground, killing him instantly. Goes to pick up Egil, picks him up.
Like his own son?
His own son. And his servant woman, Thorgerd Brack, cries out, "What are you doing? You're about to kill your own son." So he, for whatever reason, just puts his son down and then chases Thorgerd Brack, who jumps into a body of water off of a short cliff. And Skallagrim picks up what's translated as a boulder of indeterminate size. So I imagine a fairly hefty piece of stone, and chucks it off the cliff and hits Thorgerd right between the shoulder blades. She sinks, the boulder sinks, neither ever comes up again.
Any other, less violent feats of strength?
Yes, he needed an anvil, didn't have one. Rocks in Iceland are volcanic, they're sharp, pointy, not so good when you're trying to smith something. So he takes his rowboat out, however far through the water, dives down, picks up a fairly sizable stone that's nice and smooth, swims it back up to the boat, chucks it in somehow, and rows home, takes it to his smithy, and that's his anvil.
All right, so he was definitely strong.
He was not a weak man.
And because he's a berserker, probably prone to fits of rage.
Prone to fits of rage, and chances are with that kind of lifestyle, you're going to gain a lot of muscle mass just from being such a fighter.
So, fighting, smashing iron, making weapons.
Farming,
Yep. Heavy labor.
Yeah, entire life is just revolved around it.
And he's berserker.
Yes.
All right, so he was a legitimate badass.
Oh yeah, no, he killed many enemies.
Okay, so when we say this, he wasn't necessarily a good character.
Good is relative when you're talking about the sagas.
Explain.
Their idea of moral right isn't our idea of moral right. For them, it's how much can you brag about what you've done, how much have you fought, how many people have you killed, who were the people that you killed, and what was the context. If you kill a political leader, that takes you up right away. If you kill the poor old farmer that's missing an arm, there's no glory in that for them.
So whereas we would look at what he did to his servant, killing with a boulder, for example, as bad today, back then he might have laughed about it over beers with his friends.
It got him part of his reputation. So
really?
that in a way is a bit of glory. Not so much the killing of Thorgerd, but more the fact that he killed someone by lifting a boulder.
And basically crushing with it in the water.
Yeah.
So so the idea when you talk about moral right and wrong, our society really has a hard time comprehending what they would find as good, bad, or good traits.
Yes, and I think that's why Norse paganism and Christianity clashed so much to begin with, is because one's a martial society and one is, in theory, more based off mercy and forgiveness.
So of course I got to ask, what do you think Skalla-Grím's, the real Skalla-Grím's, primary weapons would have been?
According to the saga, it's sword and shield. That was the primary that he used. His father, Kveldulf, used a double-headed axe. And Egil he kind of took the route of both his father and grandfather. He took a modified farming tool called a bill, turned it into a halberd, not as you would understand it from the later Middle Ages, because that was created in response to plate armor. But this was kind of a very early derivative, and so he had that and a shield.
So like his father, was he really strong?
Oh yeah, no, all three of them were just described as huge and troll-like.
So they're basically, so you're saying is these berserkers, this line of berserkers were basically big, violent Viking trolls.
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh. So quite a departure from Skallagrim as we know him today on YouTube.
Yes, as far as I know, people nowadays aren't chucking boulders onto other people.
Are you sure?
I hope not.
Okay, so that's interesting. So these feats of strength. And is there anything else that maybe they talked about the real Skallagrim doing?
On his way to Iceland, if I remember correctly, him and his father with their band of men got into a ship battle from the pursuing Norwegians, and him and his father just kept cutting men down.
So these guys sat in the front of the boat, basically chopping the guys down. They land, or just go jump ship to ship. How'd that look?
Mostly a jump ship to ship kind of thing. Either that or another good tactic that was practiced a lot and they would do is storm the ship while they're ashore. So you come in while they're ashore, and while they're sleeping on their ship, they're now trapped on their ship. So you can just run through and keep cutting. And that's one of the scenes. They just cut through a ship, an entire ship of men with a few of their own. But they definitely led the way.
So was there a was there a meaning to the name Skalla-Grímr?
Mostly bald head.
Explain.
It's a very loose translation. It's hard to translate names. Even place names are hard to translate accurately without the context for it. But he became bald, and he was known for it.
So basically, they were calling him Baldy.
More or less, yeah.
Okay, so kind of similar to like Ragnar Lothbrok with hairy pants.
Yeah, hairy breeches.
Okay.
There's sometimes your nickname ended up being a deed, or it was straight up just something visual about you. Like Harold Bluetooth may have been known because he had a rotting tooth.
Fine hair. Fine hair.
Very fine hairs, especially fine, not just like any blonde person.
Okay, so now we kind of talked about like the OG Skalla-Grímr. So, if you had to fight one or the other, you have a choice. You could fight Skalla-Grímr the YouTuber, or you could fight Skalla-Grímr the Berserker from history. You could resurrect him and choose to fight either one. Which one would you fight?
I'd rather fight the one that hasn't A, killed people with rocks, B, killed people by throwing them, and C, killed an insurmountable number of people for loot.
Good answer.
I'm not that good. I can't take his stuff.
Fair enough. All right. Thank you for tuning in to the first episode of Klausen Sagas with historian Mikkel Klausen.
Keep your axes sharp and your mind sharper.
You got it, folks. See you next time.